Alright, we got an Accord here with a P0443, which is an EVAP Purge control valve circuit problem. I'm not going to do a whole full-blown diagnostic video like I normally do, but I'll give you the highlights, show you where the valve is and things like that, and hey, maybe it'll help you out. This is your solenoid here. This is very difficult to show the location when it's on the vehicle. But so I figured I would just shoot this after the fact, because obviously I've already pulled it off the vehicle. But I'll show you what it looks like out of the vehicle and kind of where it sits. So this is the solenoid itself, and it attaches to this metal bracket with those 3 screws. And it sits in the vehicle just like that. So you can see it sits upside down. So all you can see is the 2 nipples for the hose, and then or the hoses, and then you just see the tops of those 3 screws. So if you don't know what you're looking for, if you're looking for a solenoid, you won't even see it because it's hidden upside down. And then the solenoid and that bracket actually live right here, right on the side of the engine, right where the tip of my finger is, right there. And then you can see there's the green plug that plugs into the solenoid. And then there's the 1 vacuum hose, and then the 2nd vacuum hose right there. But this is where it lives. And so yeah, it just sits in there like that. Has 2 hose connections right there, and 1 plug, and then 2 bolts and a clip hold this thing in. The clip is just for a wiring harness. So now I'll cut back in and show you how I test it real quick, and then I'll show you some tips on getting it out of the vehicle. Alright, we're just gonna command this purge solenoid on real quick and test it. As you can see, I got my got the Vantage Ultra hooked up. We got 0 volts right here, and I'm back probed in to the wire on the solenoid, and you can see, oh, it's unplugged right there. You can see 0 volts with it unplugged, and I'll plug it in now. Now it's plugged in. You can see we went up to 12 volts, and because it was back probed with it unplugged, we know that that's our control wire right there. Alright, so because we had 0 volts with it unplugged and 12 volts with it plugged in, we know that that's our control wire right here, which should be yellow and blue. But if you notice, the ignition, the battery voltage is black with yellow, and the other one's yellow with blue. So they both have yellow, and they're both a dark color on the other side, so it's hard to tell which one. So that's a good way to know which one is which, is you just unplug the thing, and if it stays at 12, it's your battery voltage, and if it drops to 0, it's going to be the control wire, which goes to the PCM, or the engine computer. And so now what we're going to do, I got the scan tool here, if you can see it. We're just going to command this on, and once we command it on, we should see this drop to 0 volts, which means we're completing the circuit through the solenoid, and then we should hear it click, and we should hear it come on. You can see we dropped to 0 right there, but I don't know if you noticed, we had nothing. You can see we're at 100% duty cycle. You can see we're energized, so we know the computer has full control of this because we saw it drop. So we'll escape and turn it off, and you can, boom, you can see it came back to 12 volts. So we know our circuit integrity is good. We know our command from our computer is good. We know everything in the circuit is good. So our only issue is right there at the solenoid. And I can tell that it's bad because we have no clicking. If you listen close, I'm going to turn it on. Alright, I just commanded it on. You hear nothing. No click, no anything. And I just turned it off. So there. That pretty much tells us right there our solenoid is dead. And so, let's see if I can get you a shot on the mirror here. there's a shot right next to my connector right there. You can see I'm pulling out of the way. And then right there, that's the bolt you're going to have to take out for this bracket. So the purge solenoid is attached to that bracket. Alright, now in order to take this thing out, there's the two hoses which you see I have disconnected. Alright, and then I unplug this sensor right here, which goes right there. And then there's a bolt right down there where I have my finger on. Got to get that one off. And then if you can see, let's see where my extension is right there. Just using a 6-inch extension that goes over to the, if you can see the bolt or the chrome socket in there, it goes over to that bolt right there. Alright, here's the setup I used for the second bolt. As you can see, I'm using a 3/8 inch on this one. These bolts are in there tight. I was able to use a 1/4 inch on the lower one because it was a straight shot. This one, I don't know if you can see in there, but I had to use a universal, and with a 1/4 inch universal I would have broke it. So you can see you can get a 3/8 inch wrench with what am I using, a 2-inch extension, I believe, with a universal. I got in there, cracked it loose, no issues. And here's a little tip. As you can see, here's the setup I used to get that bolt out. When you're unscrewing it, once you break it free, you probably have to take the ratchet off and just unscrew it by hand. Once you do that, once you start getting it out, use a magnet like this, put it just like that to catch this bolt once it frees. Trying to keep a bolt inside a universal joint, inside the engine compartment, is a losing battle. I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10 you're going to drop that bolt. And you drop a bolt inside an engine compartment and it doesn't hit the ground, you just lost it. So it's a little tip, keep you from having a lot of headaches. This is what the bracket with the solenoid looks like out of the vehicle. As you can see, I was going to pop this piece out. Sits right there. It's going to pop it out, but as you can see, it broke right off. Been sitting next to the engine for 10-15 years. These things just are brittle. As soon as you touch them, they snap. So I'll just use a wire tie to go right around the wire. But as you can see, that's where one bolt goes like that and it just slips over, and the other one has an actual hole, full hole. And what sits in there about like that. And so to take your solenoid out, 3 screws, pop it off. And while I'm thinking of it, these screws, these suckers are on there tight. You need to use a good screwdriver with a good tip on there. And you don't have to use a snap-on, but make sure it has a good tip on there so that you can get those free without damaging them. Otherwise you'll be drilling them out. Now if these screws seem a little too tight, you're having trouble getting them out, you may want to put a little bit of PB Blaster or some kind of penetrating oil right there and let them sit for a while. Maybe even tap on them from the back side here, just tap to help that penetrating oil get down there and loosen them up, because these suckers, they can be in there tight. And then once you get the 3 screws out, all of them are the same. You should be able to just take it right off. And that's it right there. So obviously just remember how it goes back on. I don't think you can put it on wrong, but this is how it goes right back on there with your new one. Alright, just for you guys, we're just doing a little resistance check on the solenoid itself. You can also test it with a 9-volt battery. Put the positive and negative 9-volt battery on there and see if the solenoid activates. I showed how to do this in my EVAP video, and as you can see, I have this one connected up and we're at 86 to 94 kilo ohms. You see it just changed. It was sitting there at 96 or 86. Now it went to 97 K ohms, 97,000 ohms. And you can see, according to Snap-on, the resistance should be 25 to 55 ohms. So we're not even close. So according to this, it's bad. Just to give you a quick visual, because it's kind of hard to see under there. This is, so the bracket sits in there like this. So this bolt is right here, this bolt is right here, and then here's the setup I used for that bolt. So I used a 1/4 inch longer ratchet And this one actually, you know, will bend if I need to, and a 6-inch extension and a 12mm socket. And then on the other bolt, I use the 3/8 inch one with a what is that? About a 3-inch extension, and then a universal with a 12-inch or a 12mm socket. And I did that because this bolt, well, both of them were pretty tight. I definitely had to put a lot of strain on this to break that one loose. And I probably could have used a 3/8 to get in there, but the bigger extension and sockets and stuff you put in there, the harder it is to get to that bolt. You got to maneuver through a bunch of stuff. And then this, I used the 3/8 inch because I had to put so much pressure on that bolt to break it free that I was afraid if I put a 1/4-inch swivel I would have broke it, or a 1/4-inch universal. I would have broke that thing, so that's why I went with the 3/8 on this bolt. So just to give you an idea of the setup I used. Alright, now to test these off the car, let's see, if I remember correctly, it sits in here this way. Positive 12 volts was on top, and then the bottom wire was the ground. I think that's the way it was. If you mix them up, it's really not that big a deal. You can just flop them around. And like I said, we should be able to touch it and hear something. We hear nothing. And this is a normally closed valve, so we can just hook our little vacuum pump up to it. Come on, there we go. Hook the vacuum pump up to it, pump it up a little bit, 12 or 13 like that, and you see it's holding, so that portion is good. But we should be able to touch the battery right here, and it should open, and it should release all that pressure. You can see it's not doing anything. So that's another way you can test these off the vehicle. Here's the part number for this vehicle. You just got to make sure to get the correct part number. Evidently they made different purge valves depending on whether you had California emissions or US emissions. So definitely be sure to get the correct part number. Alright, I got the scan tool hooked up again just so I can command the solenoid on. I have the brand new one in there, just hooked up, just plugged in. It's not actually mounted or anything. I just want you to hear the noise that it makes when you turn it on, or the noise that it's supposed to make. It's on. You can see it doesn't make a whole lot of sound when it's on, but then you can hear it click off. On, off. So you can see, just makes a little bit of a clicking sound, but that's a real good indication that it's working. It's not foolproof, but it's definitely a good indication. One other tip for installation, because this has an opening right here, you can actually put the bolt in by hand first, and then set this on there. You can just go ahead and set it on there, and then take the other bolt, put it in. Much easier doing it that way. Another tip for getting that one bolt in there, put a piece of paper inside your socket and then stuff the bolt in there. That'll hold it so it won't drop out. And if this universal is pretty good, it doesn't move around, but if yours flops all over the place, wrap some electrical tape around it to keep it from moving around so you can get it in there. Alright, there's a shot of it all done, back connected. Just remember, anytime you're dealing with bolts like that, up underneath stuff where you can barely see them, it's an exercise in patience. Take your time, get it done. If you were like me, don't forget, plug in this connector here, get both bolts tightened, make sure the 3 screws on your sensor are tightened, make sure we're plugged back in down here, make sure you got your 2 hoses back in place with the clamps back on where they're supposed to be. Do all that and you'll be good to go. And last but not least, a zip tie around those wiring looms so they don't rub around, create a break. So as you saw, I showed where the location of that purge valve is. These things don't go bad on these Hondas, on these K24 Accords very often. But obviously you see they do go bad, and who knows, in the future we might see more of a pattern failure on these. But so far in the life cycle of these 2003 to 2007 Accords, they haven't failed too often yet. But putting it back on is straightforward. Just get it bolted back up and get everything plugged back in. Not too difficult. Like I said, this is just a companion video to my EVAP video. What was it, the P0457, I believe, on the Accord, where I went into full details on how the EVAP system works and everything. So if you haven't watched that video, you should check it out, because I definitely go to the drawing board and show you how the whole system works and how I smoke test the system. Now this one didn't give me a leak code, so I wasn't too worried about smoke testing the system. This one gave me a circuit code, so I wanted to make sure the circuit was working right. And if the valve would not have failed, or the solenoid would not have failed outside the car, I would have went back in there and hooked the light up directly to the power and ground, to that connector, to make sure I didn't have some bad wiring in there. Because obviously the circuit integrity was good, but that was with a voltmeter. If there's some corrosion or resistance in the wire, sometimes it'll show good on a voltmeter which has no load on it. Then you put a load like a heavy light bulb on there, and then you'll see that it won't light the light bulb. So I would have done that had the solenoid not failed off the car, but because it did, I wasn't worried about it. But in any event, hey, hopefully this video helped you out. Hopefully it was a good companion to my other video. If so, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.